We are broadcasting.
Good evening. Welcome to the workshop for the replacement of the San Pablo Avenue Bridge project. We thank you in advance for taking the time to join us to learn more about the project. Jason, you may share your screen.
Thank you very much, Misha. Can everybody see this?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Hi, everyone. My name is Misha Carr. I am the Senior Project Manager in the Public Works Division.
Brad Donahue with the City of Pinole, Interim Public Works Director.
Mike Roberts, City of Hercules Public Works Director, City Engineer.
Chris Dirksen with Gray Bow and Scott.
And Jason Jurens with Quincy Engineering.
The City of Pinole selected Quincy Engineering in May of 2020 to complete the preliminary engineering for the project, and we're pleased with all the progress that we've made. We are committed to continue to keep the public apprised of all the details, and this presentation of the project and its alternatives are a refinement of what we've previously presented to the Pinole City Council, Hercules City Council, and the West Contra Costa Transportation Advisory Committee. Hercules staff has also been an active member of our project team, and a lot of consideration has been made to create realistic alternatives that serve the community in the best way possible. The public will have an opportunity to ask questions at the conclusion of the presentation. And for those of you that are watching tonight or later, you can submit questions via email. We'll have an informational slide to do so. And with that, I will turn it over to Jason. Thank you.
Thanks, Misha. Again, my name is Jason Jurens. I'm with Quincy Engineering, project manager hired by the city. So we're talking tonight about the San Pablo Avenue Bridge Replacement Project. So from a project standpoint, the goal of the project is to provide a safe, modern bridge and roadway that enhances and supports multimodal transportation. So in addition to the existing bridge, the 2 lanes in each direction, we're looking also to enhance multimodal access across the bridge and incorporate both bike and pedestrian facilities that meet current design standards into the overall project design. So the existing bridge is an 80-year-old bridge. It was built in the 1930s. It is defined structurally deficient by Caltrans. So with all infrastructure ages, and then over time, it begins to deteriorate. So this bridge is reaching the end of its service life. It is eligible for replacement under a Caltrans and FHWA highway bridge program that will fund a portion of the bridge replacement cost. So I really like this picture. This is a modern picture, but it could have been taken back in the 1940s. At the time, the bridge was designed and constructed. It was really state of the art from a bridge design standpoint, and then also from a railroad standpoint. These days, this would not meet modern design code from a structural standpoint or from a railroad access standpoint. So these will be enhancements that the new bridge will incorporate. So a little bit about the project location. The project is, as most folks know, is kind of in the north corner of the city of Pinole. So on the lower left-hand side of this slide, that's the city of Pinole. the red dashed line is the city limits, and then the upper portion of this slide is the city of Hercules. The city of Pinole is the project proponent, but as Misha said, we're working very closely with the city of Hercules as we develop this project. So a little bit about the project considerations and challenges. This is a very challenging site. We are in the built out condition, and so there is not a lot of room. Everything is pretty tight and pretty compact. And so just kind of working our way through this slide, the main driver is traffic on San Pablo Avenue. San Pablo Avenue is a parallel facility to Interstate 80. In this portion of the East Bay, there's not too many crossings across the railroad, so this really is a critical link to get from one side of the railroad to the other. The next item is that with that railroad, it is active. BNSF is the owner of the railroad. They do own the right-of-way, and so any design that we incorporate will have to meet BNSF standards for modern design criteria. Additionally, we have utilities at the project site. We've got AT&T on the exterior of the bridge on the west side. And then within a City of Hercules public utility easement, we do have a pair of large diameter East Bay Bud water lines, and then also a large diameter PG&E natural gas main. Beyond that, pedestrian access is very important. We've got sidewalks on each side of the bridge. We want to facilitate a multimodal access across the bridge. And then we also have a pedestrian path that is between Hercules by the Bay residents and the existing bridge that we would like to connect. We also have a private driveway at the southeast corner of the bridge that we would like to enhance and make quite a bit safer. And then lastly, just as I mentioned, the City of Hercules residents with Hercules by the Bay, we want to be very mindful as to the location of the bridge in relation to residents, as to where people live. So I want to talk about a couple of alternatives that we've developed. As Misha said, as she mentioned, we've been refining on these alternatives. And so each of the alternatives does incorporate two 12-foot traveled lanes, 8-foot shoulders, outside shoulders in both the northbound and southbound direction. Those shoulders double as class 2 bikeways. We also have a 10-foot sidewalk slash bike path, multi-use path on the west side that connects to the existing sidewalk infrastructure that is already out there. We'll also be connecting the pedestrian path that's between the existing bridge and the residents at Hercules by the Bay. We'll incorporate those into the design as well. So all designs will meet current roadway design standards, current bridge design standards, and will be ADA compliant. So the first alternative that we really want to talk about is alternative 1, which is replacing the bridge on its existing alignment. So replacing the bridge on the existing alignment has many advantages. The first one is we're putting the bridge back in its existing location. So there's a reason why the engineers originally put the bridge in the spot that it's located. It's the best spot for the bridge. Number 2, we're able to use existing right-of-way for the new bridge. The city already owns the right-of-way, and so the bridge would go into that new right-of-way. And thirdly, we're not placing the bridge any closer to, traffic is not moving closer to those residences at Hercules by the Bay. So in order to build a bridge though, we need to maintain traffic on San Pablo Avenue. So this alternative would construct a temporary detour, a 2-lane detour that would skirt around the west side of the existing bridge. We would install a temporary bridge, and then traffic would use this 2-lane facility during the duration of construction. We've done some traffic modeling. We're mindful of user delays during this detour phase, and our detailed traffic modeling resulted in an AM delay of approximately 5 minutes. So a 5-minute delay beyond what the existing travel time is if you're getting across the bridge in the existing condition, and that's in the southbound direction. And then an 8-minute delay in the, an 11-minute delay in the PM peak, and that's in the northbound direction. So based on those traffic numbers, the project development team felt like that was in a reasonable amount of delay to be able to accommodate for construction. From a construction standpoint, we would be looking at an approximately 18-month length of construction to construct the bridge. And so we would be building the bridge in one single stage. That's very efficient for the contractor. It cuts down the duration. It's more economical as well. And so all of these features combined led us to alternative one being a very good alternative. The second alternative we've developed is placing the bridge on a parallel alignment. And so this alternative, as mentioned, does place the bridge closer to those residences at Hercules by the Bay. In this configuration, we would reduce the width of the travel lanes on San Pablo Avenue. We would have 2 lanes in the northbound direction and 2 lanes in the southbound direction during the first stage of construction. We would then remove a portion of the existing bridge, and then we would then construct a portion of the new bridge parallel to the existing bridge. Once that portion of the new bridge was constructed, we would move traffic onto that new bridge. It would consist of those same 4 lanes, although narrowed down with a posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour. Then we would demolish the remainder of the existing bridge, then construct the remainder of the new bridge, and then put traffic in its final configuration. So as I mentioned, it does bring the bridge closer to the existing homes. It does have impacts to utilities that are in the City of Hercules public utility easement. Those would likely require relocation. So from an overall standpoint, this is a viable alternative. It just has a set of different impacts, different than alternative one. So from an overall cost standpoint, we did a fairly detailed cost estimate and determined the cost of the roadway, the bridge structure, right-of-way and utility relocation, the cost of design and construction management to come up with a project total for alternative one of $29.1 million. For alternative two, that same estimate is $36.2 million. So you can see where the difference in construction cost is. It's mainly in the structure overall. Since that's a 2-stage construction, we're essentially building 2 separate bridges right next to each other and connecting them together. From an overall funding standpoint, the project has secured $15.78 million through FHWA's Highway Bridge Program that is administered down through Caltrans. We've also received $1.6 million of sub-regional transportation mitigation program funding through WICTAC, an additional $387,000 through CCTA and the Measure J funding. So a funding gap still exists, and as we're working through the project development process, we're continuing to look for funding to completely fund this project. So once we've developed alternatives, determining what is the best alternative, the best value alternative, is very important to understand which configuration provides the best value. So we've gone through a value analysis to try to help us find out which of these 2 alternatives gives us the best value. So working with the design team and the project development team, we came up with what we thought were the 4 most important criteria when looking at value as it relates to the 2 separate alternatives. So we looked at right-of-way, traffic impacts, utility impacts, and construction duration. Based on input from the cities, City of Hercules, City of Pinole, and then our just collective judgment, having done bridge replacement projects, we felt that right-of-way was the most important factor. So we want to minimize permanent right-of-way impacts. So we felt that that should get an overall share of 40%, or it's the most important factor. The next most important factor was traffic impacts, not just for people that are living adjacent to the bridge project, but it really is an interregional route. It's a fire life safety route, so we felt that that had a relative importance of 30%. Utility impacts, 20%, relocating the existing utilities that are there are going to be very, very disruptive, very costly. So we felt that that was very important. And then just overall construction duration is, I think, generally speaking, we're all fairly tolerant of construction duration as long as, we get in there, we do the work, and then we get done. And so those add up to 100%. So then once we've developed that weighting, then we grade or score the two alternatives against each other. So in the case of right-of-way, we want to score that impact of right-of-way as it relates to the final bridge being within the existing right-of-way and not being outside of that existing right-of-way. And so that got a high score, so that was a 10. On alternative 2, the edge of the bridge deck is moving closer to the existing homes, and so that got a score of 4. Traffic impacts, alternative 1 got a score of 3. The 2-lane section is disruptive during the duration of construction. Alternative 2, we scored that a 4. That's a little bit less disruptive, but because we're going to have a temporary traffic condition for a longer duration of time, it was just marginally better in our estimation. From a utility standpoint, alternative 1, we do have temporary utility impacts, so we scored that a 4, whereas alternative 2 was more impactful, having permanent impacts to both the PG&E natural gas main and also the SMUD large diameter water lines. And then lastly, construction duration, alternative 1 with its single stage bridge construction, we scored that as 7, while alternative 2, because it's a little bit longer construction, we scored that a 3. So in order to develop a score, we take the weighting times the overall score, and then that results in a criterion score. And then we sum those scores up, and that gives us our performance score. Now, stick with me, it's a performance score. And so alternative 1, we came up with a performance score of 640, and then alternative 2, a performance score of 350. Once we had that performance score, then we were able to apply the cost to get a value index. And so if we take the performance score divided by the cost, that gives us our value index score. So alternative 1, with its high performance and relatively low cost to alternative 2, it resulted in a value index of 22, whereas alternative 2 has a value index of 9.67. Now, the actual number is not all that important. What is important is their relative difference. So the high value score results in the best value. So based on this criteria that we define, alternative 1 is the alternative that creates the best value. So next steps, we're going to continue technical studies, continue refining on our design. We're in the middle of the environmental process right now. We'll be moving forward with a type selection document as it relates to the road and the bridge. That type selection document is required by Caltrans as they are the keepers of the funding and the ultimate approver. And so we'll continue to coordinate with Caltrans, coordinate with BNSF, and again with utilities, with East Bay Mud, with PG&E, and with AT&T. Then all this information that we've developed, the design, the environmental information, the geotechnical information, will all get compiled into an overall project report that will really be the backbone of the project, and it'll be one complete document that has all of the information information for the project. So once this is complete, we'll be moving through the CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act side, and that's through the city of Pinole as the lead agency. So the city council ultimately of Pinole will be the one selecting the final design. On the NEPA side, that's the National Environmental Policy Act. That is delegated from FHWA through Caltrans, and Caltrans will be approving that national environmental document. Once those are complete, we'll begin the final design and begin the right-of-way acquisition phase. Right-of-way acquisition, if needed, at a minimum, we'll need some permits or some right-of-way permissions from BNSF, the railroad. There's no way around that, so we'll be getting that. And then we'll also push into final design, developing the documents needed for construction. So from an overall schedule standpoint, we have developed the topography, the topo surveys. We've used that for our preliminary 30% design. We've performed the geotech, the environmental studies, the railroad coordination has begun, and then also the utility coordination. So between now and the end of winter through the first part of the spring, we'll be completing our environmental technical studies with a goal of having CEQA approvals and NEPA approvals in the middle of summer. It's at this point that the right-of-way phase can begin, final design phase can begin. We'll continue to coordinate with utilities and complete final plans in the middle of 2023. So with final plans completed in 23 and right-of-way acquisition completed at the end of 23, pending funding, we would advertise the project in spring of 24 and then likely construct from summer of 24 through fall of 24. With alternative one, we anticipate approximately 18 to 20 months of construction duration, where alternative two likely will be 2 full seasons of construction. So all the time we're doing this development, we'll be having agency meetings, permitting meetings, railroad coordination, and other outreach throughout. So with that, be glad to take any questions.
Misha, I think you were going to open it up to Q&A at this point.
Yes, we have quite a few questions. I just want to say for those watching at home, there's a phone number here for you to call in. You can press 9 to alert us if you would like to comment, and then when it is your turn, you'll press *6 to unmute yourself once you're called upon. And the phone number is 1-669-900-6833, and the Zoom webinar ID is 837-8805-0600. We'll leave this screen up as we take questions. So the first question is from someone titled Pixel4XL. I'm going to allow you to ask your question now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Yes. I have a question. I saw that the timetable of the project was revised and it was talking about construction in 2024 to 2025. I was kind of curious because recently Pinole Council adopted their 5-year strategic plan, and at that time the only thing related to this project was I believe some monies for, might have been 2022, which appeared to be just for engineering. But it made the comment that this project was beyond the scope of the 5-year strategic plan. So I'm kind of puzzled.
I'm going to assume your question is related to the 5-year capital improvement plan. Am I correct?
Oh, that's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So the 5-year capital improvement plan currently lists out financial details for completing the preliminary engineering and design. And once, so the first year of the plan is when we ask for the financial allocation, and the future years of the plan are mostly for planning. As we get closer to the final design and have a clearer idea of what the costs are going to be and our ability to secure additional funding, we will continue to revise the CIP document.
Okay. Then the next comments I have, I'm one of the people who lives on San Pablo Avenue, and I'm one of the 2 people whose driveways are impacted by this project. Now that I'm retired and I'm home more or less all day long, one of the things that's absolutely horrifying about San Pablo Avenue right now is the amount of speeding. Given that to comply with Caltrans regulations, the lanes on the bridge have to be wider, what can be done to mitigate the speeding? I would like to at least first the project team to kind of consider that, because east of Pinole Valley Road towards Hercules, the speeding in both directions is rather unpleasant, to say the least.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent comment. From a overall speed standpoint, you have it really, especially coming down the hill. It's a fairly steep grade. You've got people picking up speed, and then as we come into town, we do have the John Street intersection as we slow down. And so lane standards are really set by the amount of traffic, so the ADT, the amount of traffic that's on the facility, and then also by just the ground terrain. And so in this instance, we would look at potentially including some traffic calming measures at the project location. So from a highway bridge program standpoint, the program will pay for the bridge replacement and then some additional roadway work on each side. It's approximately 200 feet on each side. So we would need to work with our traffic folks to potentially incorporate some traffic calming, and then also at the same time be working with the city of Pinole and the city of Hercules for potentially enhanced enforcement too at the same time. But it's a very good point.
No, it is a very serious problem.
Yeah.
Lately the Pinole police have basically disappeared from this area. There's no enforcement, frankly, in terms of speeding on San Pablo Avenue. It is a real problem. And I am concerned that simply widening the lanes, which again has to be done, is just going to encourage the speeding. Because you're going from, obviously in Hercules, it's 40 miles an hour posted, and then you get to downtown Pinole 25, which frankly is a joke. But people just don't stop. And it's not just coming down the hill, it's also people coming out of Pinole Valley Road and basically flooring it to get to wherever they're going to the east of Pinole. And the only other comment I would have is, and I don't need an answer right now, but I would love to know, because of the railroad right-of-way, the height of the bridge above the tracks. I'm kind of curious what is going to be the grade change in front of my driveway in my house. But again, you don't need to answer that at this time.
Yeah, so the grade, I will say that the grade on the bridge deck elevation is going to come up. We are looking at, if we do end up going with alternative one, we're looking at wanting to touch down before John Street. And so we're looking to minimize any kind of any kind of grade change, especially when it gets to those two houses that's down towards the corner on John Street on the east side of San Pablo Avenue. So the railroad has been good partners when it comes to working with design criteria. The criteria that they will not bend on is the vertical clearance over the top of the tracks. So the bottom of our bridge has to be a set amount above the railroad tracks. So that's one of those design standards that we're not going to be able to break. But with there's other standards, and the length of the span, that determines how deep the bridge is. So we're working with our bridge designers and working with the railroad to see how we can minimize the grade change at the bridge.
Okay. Okay, and my one final comment, currently people going towards Hercules, if they're pedestrians, you'd be amazed how many people use, I'll call it the south side of the street.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, given my understanding, pedestrian is going to be on the north side only, although there may be bike lanes on both sides, as I understand it. I'm hoping at least there'll be some attention paid to some sort of signage to get people some stop crossing, on the south side.
Yep.
Because they're going to use that 8-foot zone. And that's my final comments or questions.
Thank you. That's the pedestrian. That's a very good comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Kent and Ann Mordiarty. I am going to allow you to speak.
Hi, this is Kent. You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. One is, I just wanted to confirm what was said about the driveway access up to 2711 San Pablo Avenue. That sounds like the plan now is that the driveway is going to stay where it is, or at least be off of San Pablo Avenue, and now there's no chance at all that it's going to be going through the John Street neighborhood. That's what I heard. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're looking at keeping the driveway access off San Pablo Avenue at this time.
Okay, great, thanks. And then another question I had regarding the bike lanes. It sounds like there's a 8-foot shoulder, and you said a class 2 bike lane. That's, as far as I understand, that's just a single stripe separating the bikes and the cars. 8 feet is pretty wide, which is great. I wonder if there's room for a buffered section between the bikes and the cars. I think that's a class 4 bike lane, but I'm not sure. But that's a lot safer type of bike lane, and it sounds like there's room for it. Is that something that could happen?
I know from a design configuration standpoint, we haven't got all the way through the striping plan, but yeah, having that little buffer there, we likely would have enough room for that, but we'd have to work that through the overall bike master plan and see if that was compatible. But we'll definitely take that comment.
Okay, so that's, I know it's pretty early for that, but
It is.
I'm getting, hopefully what I'm saying now gets recorded somewhere and is considered when you all get to that point. And then one last thing about bike lanes, and maybe this is a question more for the city of Pinole, but when the bridge ends, and it sounds like it's going to end close to the San Pablo Avenue, John Street intersection, are the bike lanes just going to end, and is there going to be any connection between the bike lanes and what we already have, or is it just going to end? That was my question.
So from a overall this project standpoint, it being funded through a bridge replacement program, Caltrans really holds the improvements to what is needed, the minimum needed in order to connect the bridge to the approach roadway. So I think at this point, From just a bridge project standpoint, we would look to taper into the existing at each side. But I know the city of Pinole continues to refine on their bike master plan, and so that could be something that we looked at.
Yeah, actually, we don't have a bike master plan.
Okay.
But I guess maybe my question is for Misha is how can we, at what stage would it be appropriate to start asking about how we could kind of integrate the bridge to our existing street, and so that it's not just a kind of a truncated bike lane, but how, when would be the time for us to start looking at how we could maybe make that part of San Pablo Avenue more of a complete street, so that the bridge and our existing street are more integrated and you don't just have a truncated bike lane?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Ken, and one that I think that will be addressed during the development of our active transportation plan, which is scheduled in our capital improvement plan. So definitely something we will consider at that point.
Right, and this is Anne, and I actually have one other question is, an 18 to 20 month construction, let's assume that we go with alternative one. What is going to happen with bike access during that time?
So during that time, that's the alternative that had the temporary detour. Yes. We are accommodating bikes and peds on that detour around the project site. And so it likely won't be on the roadway facility or across the bridge, but we're going to barrier separate pedestrians. And so there would be a separated location across the bridge and through the approach roadway during construction.
Excellent. That's good to hear. Thank you.
That's all we had. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. The next question we have is from Lisa and Sarah. I will unmute you now.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you, but we hear something.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
There we go. I think that is on my end. Are you okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for access to this information. It's really helpful to get a picture of what's in mind. We've been hearing about this for a good little bit now, and this is great. My question is, we have a business right down the street from the John Street intersection where the bridge will end. And so we are just wondering what kind of impact there will be on the current state of the parking and access for the homes and businesses right on San Pablo Avenue between John Street and Pinole Valley. If that is going to pretty much stay as is, or if what you guys see that being leading up to and during construction of the bridge.
Yeah, that's a good question. The permanent improvements, we're anticipating at this point conforming down right there at the John Street intersection. And so as it relates to the detour also, we're looking to bring that detour in right around the same location. And so we don't think that between John Street towards the middle of town that we would have any big impacts. There would be construction traffic. There would be construction going on at the roadway conforms, kind of in isolated times. But the bridge itself is going to get slightly longer than the existing bridge, and then the rest of the construction is going from that little bit elevated bridge deck and then bringing it down. So don't really anticipate a whole lot of impacts, south of John Street. But again, we're going to have it's heavy civil construction, so there will be construction equipment coming and going But from an overall standpoint, the goal is not to modify any parking or modify any access to any of the businesses.
Okay, that's good to know. Currently, even when we have like water line issues, drainage issues, or any kind of construction issues at the John Street crossing, and I think we've had like AT&T, some communications issues there. What happens along the few parking spaces that are available right here along San Pablo is that you get cones and signage directing traffic of what's coming up. That can take up to 3 or 4 parking spaces. And then if there's ever, it looks like you guys are going to do construction staging area over by the tracks. Will that also affect the public parking that is off of Charles Street across from San Pablo?
So that dirt parcel is owned by BNSF, and so ideally we'd be entering into agreement with BNSF for some of that area, but we would need to work with them. There's a potential to use some other city property that's down there along Charles as a laydown area as well. From a sign standpoint, since the signs are going to be in place longer, I can see us having signs kind of in that landscape area if you're in the northbound direction. From an overall sign package standpoint, as the design speed or the speed goes down, the signs can kind of get a little bit closer. And so I wouldn't think that we would be having, any coned off area or any portable signs being left out that would be taking up parking. But part of that too is the contractor's operation based on us doing similar projects. They want to stay off San Pablo Avenue just because of how busy it is, and if they've got a nice laydown area, which they do in this case, they would likely use that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I suppose we would want to interact with the city of Pinole in order to stay abreast of how the public parking that is adjacent to what would be the BNSF staging area, access to that, how that would be impacted. Is that correct? We would just stay in contact with the city of Pinole. Yeah.
I could see, honestly, if you look in Google Earth right now, there's some cars parked that on the north side of Charles, kind of in that area before it's chained off.
Yes.
We could see that, being restricted. The contractor is going to need access in and out of there with some of their large, their large trucks when it comes to materials and deliveries and other equipment. So I can see it being restricted potentially on the north side.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that question, and thank you to all the callers. We're patiently waiting as we get through all the questions. Our next question is from a caller ending in 1044. I'm going to allow you to speak now. This is for a caller with the phone number ending in 1044. You may ask your question now.
You may have to press 6 to unmute.
Oh.
Thanks, Brent.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. Hey, I'm a resident of Pinole, and I work in the field of structural rehabilitation. And one of the questions I have, it seems that you guys have not been perhaps exposed to a different discipline of structural rehabilitation for the structure for this bridge, which is with carbon fiber composites. With those carbon fiber composites, something that's widely used by all DOTs across the country, including Caltrans quite a bit. And it certainly has the ability to provide and most likely meet all the deficient elements in the bridge that needs to be reinforced, and potentially leaving the bridge in place and just strengthen it to, whatever degree it needs to be strengthened. Obviously with that, you have no road, impact and reconstruction. You keep the peace with the residents, with the business. You don't impact the commute traffic, the parking, and all the horror that this project would entail. With things like this, you would most likely already have your, the funding to strengthen this bridge, and will be a fraction, and the schedule for it would be also a fraction. I don't know if it's possible to perhaps meet with Jason and expose him to these disciplines.
Oh, thank you for your comment. Yeah, we would be interested in hearing more from you. Rehabilitating the existing bridge in its existing location doesn't fix the deficiencies with the lane widths and with the shoulder, with the lack of bicycle facilities, and then the ADA issues that it currently has. But we would be willing to have a discussion with you about it.
Yeah, I'll reach out, because definitely you can still achieve the enhancements and the some of the lane expansions that you're planning to. I think it can be done, but then again, you can work with the structure that's already there and just add, the right amount of reinforcement to it to come up to whatever level you need to be. So I'll be reaching out later to you and trying to expose you to these other methods for your consideration.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The next question we have is by Jeff. I'm going to unmute you now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you can still hear me? I just logged off the phone.
Yes, we can still hear you.
Okay. So I live on Skelly, and there is a new 40-person condo complex that is moving in at the end of Skelly at I'm just trying to find the address of it. 215 Skelly, which is basically on the north side of the bridge that you're building. There's an issue there in that there's going to be 40 new houses with a lot of new cars, and many of them are going to be trying to drive out of there and go into downtown Pinole. And that's scheduled over the next year or so to be developed. In both option 1 and option 2, I didn't see any connecting bridges over to Skelly. And my understanding is that there used to be a bridge across the railroad track to Skelly there. In option 2, you're moving the bridge a little bit north, and it's almost touching the Skelly Street in that proposal. It doesn't seem like it would take much to connect those two streets. Has anyone thought about working with the Hercules City regarding this large new development that's going in and traffic patterns that are going to need to happen getting into Pinole?
From a just a connection standpoint, yeah, I mean, you can when you go out to the site or Google Earth, you can see there used to be a bridge that was crossing the railroad. I understood it was a pedestrian bridge at the time. It could potentially have been a vehicle bridge in times past, but I understood it was a pedestrian bridge. And so that was the nexus for that path that is now between the back of the folks on Skelly and then between them and the bridge. And so the thought is for pedestrian connectivity is to take that path and wrap it around and drop it into the new bridge on San Pablo and work those folks around. If you leave your information, we can see from a traffic standpoint. I believe when we generate the traffic numbers, the traffic modeling, we're looking at what is in the general plan. If that improvement is within the general plan, then that should be incorporated into the traffic model information. So we should have accurate traffic numbers with that build out condition, but that's something that we can definitely check.
Okay, just to be clear on the slide here, it doesn't actually list any contact information about how we can get in touch with you guys. So it would be great if you guys could post that before the meeting is done. Also, I'm not just talking about pedestrian traffic, I'm talking about automobile traffic. Because we're gonna have 40 houses with, probably at least 80, if not 100 plus cars trying to get out into downtown Pinole on a regular basis. So it would be a new vehicular bridge. I do like the idea of a pedestrian bridge as well, because we regularly walk across that railroad to get to downtown Pinole and the senior center and things like that. But I think we should, in the plan moving forward, we should be considering growth that's happening in that immediate vicinity and new traffic patterns that are going to happen and how to connect up with some of these surrounding areas.
Thank you. I'd also like to turn over to Mike Roberts to address some of these questions.
Thank you, Misha. So we are working with D.R. Horton, who's the current developer for the 40-acre parcel, which is what we call the McLeod Ranch. And they are incorporating plans to have the pedestrian connection leading to Pinole Creek there. However, per our general plan, the cars are to go onto Hercules Avenue and then access San Pablo. Generally, you want to have restricted points of access where you have 4 lanes of travel when you can. That's a signalized intersection, so it will be safer. We are working with D.R. Horton, though, on providing traffic calming to get from McLeod to Hercules Avenue to address concerns about speeding vehicles. As far as the vehicular bridge option, that would be very expensive and for the 40 homes could not be exacted from the developer. So it would be unfunded regardless. But we are looking into that development and traffic patterns and in discussions with the developer. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from a caller, and the number is ending in 7330. Please press *6 to unmute.
Hello, my name is Bob Antaki. I live at the end of Skelly, right at where the McLeod Ranch is. At the current time, the road noise from San Pablo Avenue is significant in my yard, and I understand that was how when I bought the home, that was there. But to have the road move closer to my house, when option 2, would really increase the noise and would also increase, I'm sure, vehicle exhaust exposure to people to me and people who live around me. At the very least, I would hope and expect that for the option 2, there would be some kind of sound wall on the bridge that would keep the sound from reaching the houses along Skelly there in Hercules by the Bay. This would be the option 2 that would move the road closer to those houses. That's my comment. Thank you.
No, thanks for your comment. So the part of the technical studies that we will be doing is a noise technical study to just quantify the amount of noise, and then also air quality analysis as well. And so we'll definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think you could have a sound wall, but I don't know how you could have an air quality wall.
No, that's true. No, that's a good point. No, appreciate that.
Thank you.
I believe these are all the questions that we've received. We will continue to stick around. If you have any questions, if you're watching from home, you can dial in, and we will continue to monitor the screen here so we can answer and note your concerns. We just received another question from a caller with the number ending in 4084. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello. I live on San Pablo Avenue. I would like to know if all the power lines and phone lines will be underground. The existing power lines that are above ground, crossing the bridge, crossing San Pablo Avenue. Is that part of the plan?
So that's a discussion that we're currently having internally. I'm getting some feedback.
Go ahead, Jason. I've muted the caller. I'll unmute in a second.
We're looking into the ability to underground that, likely in our initial read from the right-of-way rights that the utility companies have along the corridor. It's not likely that would be a reimbursable project cost through the federal bridge grant, but there are discussions ongoing internally to determine the feasibility of undergrounding those, and then who would ultimately have to pay for those utilities to be undergrounded. So I don't have a good answer. We're working through that now.
How would we find out about the discussion on paying for the utilities to go underground? And shouldn't that be a part of the project? Since you're going to raise the road, it sounds like you'll have to raise the power poles to go over the road.
Well, specifically the power lines that are in question are the ones that are fairly close to John Street down the hill. And so we still need to do some additional investigation to see if they're in conflict, if they need to move in the first place, or B, if they're too low and that would require a move. So it's all predicated on what property right PG&E has installed the utility lines into the city right away. And so there's a little bit of work on our side to determine what kind of rights PG&E has, and then what we can have them do as part of their encroachment within the city right away, or if there is a desire to underground those and the city is willing to potentially pay for those, if that is something that we want to pursue as well. So at this point, we don't have enough information to be able to determine that, but we'll be working through that as part of the overall utility process moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We are continuing to monitor for questions. Again, for those of you at home that are watching us or watching us live, you can ask your questions by phone or join us by Zoom and raise your hand. We have a question by Pixel4XL. I'm going to allow you to speak. If you're calling in, please press *6 to unmute.
Oh, hello.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, my name is John Bender. I actually called in earlier and had some comments because I am the other person who lives also on San Pablo Avenue with the driveway east of John Street. Is the railroad going to require those high chain link fences along the pedestrian portion of the bridge? And that's my only question.
Yeah, that will be one of the railroad requirements, is to have a high fence, especially on the side with the pedestrian. It's pretty standard. There's a couple of different styles that we could potentially utilize. There's more of the kind of the standard, more utilitarian type, but there is a potential for something that's a little bit more decorative, a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, and we would likely look at that, understanding that we're coming into the downtown area. It's a little bit more. We've got folks that are closer to the bridge, to the roadway facility, and so that would be an opportunity for us to potentially enhance that and make it a little bit nicer looking. Maybe some decorative posts and some other treatments, so it just wasn't just galvanized chain link fence on the bridge essentially. But we will, I believe that's a Public Utilities Commission requirement for that protection of the trains that are going under the bridge.
Okay, thank you.
You've got a question from Steve Orman. You may ask your question now.
Okay, great, thank you. And I do apologize, my wife and I joined this meeting late, so we missed probably the most important part. Is there a transcript we can review after this meeting so we can have a better understanding? We live right near the ranch in Hercules, right near the creek. And we were just wondering about how the drive around might work, or what type of, anyway, how it's going to impact traffic in our area, and how long it is going to take to replace the bridge. Because that's probably already been covered, and we don't want to bore people with that. So if there's a way for us to review the transcript, that'd be great.
Yes, the meeting will be recorded and posted, and you can get contact information for follow-up questions.
Okay, that's perfect. That's what we're looking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. That's our.
We've got another question from Pixel 4L. You may speak.
Sorry, it's me again. I just have one question. When you talked about staging areas for the construction, I assume that meant for like construction materials and so forth and so on, or did that include the construction workers parking?
It'll likely be a combination. And so as we get through the bridge type selection, really understand what type of bridge is going to be the likely bridge type, then we'll understand a little bit more of the space that is required. Traditionally, over railroad tracks, we do some kind of a girder construction. So in this case, that would need to be either a precast concrete girder or steel girder. In this case, it's likely to be a precast concrete girder. And what's nice about that is once you build the supports and the foundations, those girders come in and typically they're lifted into place. And so, pretty much overnight, you have a good working platform on the bridge. So traditionally it takes a little bit less space. But I could see us using a portion of the city property off of Charles potentially for worker parking, and then that triangular parcel that's closer to the bridge for staging of materials. What's nice about the detour also in moving traffic away from the existing bridge is the approach roadway up to the existing bridge that no longer has traffic on it. You can start to stage your equipment and material in that approach roadway. So that kind of creates a little bit more space as long as you can keep the traffic moving on the detour. So, but there's going to be a lot of equipment. There's going to be a lot of people working on the project in various stages.
Oh, well, believe me, I understand.
Yeah. But I mean, it's actually fortunate that we've got, we're still needing to work with the railroad on that parcel, but it's fortunate that there is that parcel to potentially use for a construction area. A lot of places in the built-up environment just don't have enough space to stage the material and the equipment.
Does it, using that triangular parcel for the staging, does that mean the existing oak trees, which are actually on the railroad property, probably will be disappearing?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I believe we're able to thread the temporary road and bring it back onto San Pablo without getting into those trees. And we try not to cut down trees. I mean, for one, in one standpoint, you have to mitigate if you're cutting down trees, and then number two, then you're kind of cutting down trees for a short-term use, and then when the project's done, you've got no trees, and so we would likely not cut those trees down, or try hard not to.
Okay, thank you.
That's good. Very good question. Appreciate that.
Again, thank you everybody for joining us tonight and for all your comments and questions. We will continue to monitor for questions. If you've missed any part of our meeting, this meeting is recorded. We will be posting it on the project website as well as the city's website. You'll have contact information if you'd like to ask questions. So we'll just stick around here to monitor for additional questions for a few more minutes. We've got a question from a caller ending with the number 0331. You may speak. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple of questions. One will require, when will on alternative one, when will the temporary bridge be removed?
So for alternative one, the temporary bridge will be removed when the permanent bridge is constructed and then the approach roadway is substantially complete. So once you do that,
thank you.
Yeah, once you do that once you get the bridge in, you get the approach roadway done, then you can do that traffic swap and put traffic onto the new bridge that's on existing alignment. And then at that point, we can go in and remove the detour and remove the temporary bridge.
Okay, so we're sure the temporary bridge is going to be removed.
The temporary bridge will not remain in place. It will be removed.
Yes, thank you. One other concern we have is in regard to utilities. There is a north-south natural gas transmission line, a 32-inch diameter line that goes from east to west right in front of the bridge on the Hercules side, and then travels along the bridge in a gully which is no more than about 3 feet deep, and then that returns to the along the base of the bridge by John Street. I'm just wondering, and am very concerned that when we talk to PG&E, that there will be automatic shutoff valves on this line in event of a seismic event, an earthquake, so as that we don't end up like San Carlos.
No, thank you for that question and comment. Yeah, we're definitely aware of the PG&E line and also the East Bay mud lines that are in that same public utility easement. And with the alternatives that we are looking at, part of the decision-making process is what is happening with those utilities, how much we are going to be affecting them or the potential to affect them. And so one of the reasons why alternative one had such a good performance score was that we were potentially having some temporary impacts to the gas line to where we would have to cross that with the temporary road, but we would work with PG&E to determine what would need to be improved in order to get over those utilities and not impact them with a temporary roadway. I think on the safety shutoff valves, I really can't, from a bridge and from a bridge project standpoint, I really can't comment on that. That would be a discussion that would have to have with PG&E.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think they answered a question before. There's going to be a sidewalk that will continue along the bridge down to Pinole on the west side.
Yes, so currently it's classified as a sidewalk. It's not much of a sidewalk. There's a step. I'm sure there's a step at the downhill side. I can't remember if there's one at the uphill side. I think a little one. And so in the future condition will conform to the existing sidewalks that are there. So it will be ADA accessible for all, and will be accessible for all users.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There aren't any questions coming in at the moment, but we will continue to stick around for another 7 to 8 minutes. For those of you watching from home, you can call in. Again, if you've missed any part of this presentation or would like to go back and watch it, we will have links available on the project website, as well as the city's website for you to rewatch. And also you'll be able to provide your input or ask any questions, and contact information will be provided. So we'll continue to stick around for another few minutes. We have another question from Kenneth Home. You may speak. If you're calling in, you'll have to press *6 to unmute.
Oh, here it is. Am I on?
Yes, you are. We can hear you.
Okay. The question was, is the old Railroad Avenue roadway down on the west side of the McLeod Ranch going to be resurrected for us who live in the Hercules by the Bay complex to get around to Pinole?
I think that would be something that we would have to get back to you on and understand where exactly that location is at. So did there used to be an at-grade railroad crossing at that location, or
it was a roadway that ran parallel with the track down by the bay, bordering the McLeod Ranch, and it tied into the Tennant Avenue, I think. Yeah, Tennant, that went up into Pinole. And I was wondering if that was going to be resurrected again to allow residents another access to Pinole from Hercules.
I can't speak to future plans from a city standpoint, but from a bridge project standpoint, that likely would not be included in the bridge replacement project.
Okay, thank you.
I believe Mike Roberts had something to add.
Yes, thank you for the question, Mr. Holmes. The issue of reopening railroad, including the bridge across Pinole Creek, has come up periodically and is a topic of discussion annually, and also when the city updates its circulation element plan, would take coordination with Pinole. So it's definitely not off the table, but also not part of this project. Thank you.
Pardon me?
It's parallel to the railroad track.
Yes, I said that.
Not the McLeod Ranch.
Oh, it goes around the...
We're just continuing to monitor here for questions. I'll also mention that PCTV will be rebroadcasting this meeting on channel 26. We'll be ending the meeting at 7:30, so if you have any last-minute questions that you would like to ask, we invite you to ask them now. But if you think of any questions after or are watching this meeting at a later time, you'll have opportunities to provide your input or ask questions. We're just waiting on the last opportunity for questions. We've got another 2 minutes left. If you are interested in calling in, you can call us at 1-669-900-6833. Enter the Zoom webinar ID 837-8805-0600. If you've missed this information, if you think of any other questions, you can contact me. My contact information is on the screen. You can reach me by email or contact me by phone. You can learn more about the project on Pinole, spabridge.com. There's links available that direct you to the site from the city's webpage as well. We welcome all your questions. We had a question. I think we'll move forward and close the question period. As I said, please feel free to email or call with any questions that come up. We thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us to learn about this project. I'd like to thank the project team, Quincy Engineering, our project partners, Graybone and Scott, City of Hercules, as well as our PCTV team and city staff for making this meeting a reality tonight. Thank you, everybody.